Hey, this is Matthew with BI Polar. In this episode of our series on being a PM at Microsoft, I want to introduce what may be the single most valuable phrase in a PM's vocabulary, and that is the question, what do I cut? I hope you'll stay with me. Welcome back. If you are new to the series or new to the channel, please do check out the introductory video where I talk about my goals and the audience that I have in mind for the series. Essentially, if you're a PM at Microsoft today, or if you're in a similar role or at a similar organization, or if being a PM at Microsoft is part of your career goals, I want to share with you things that I've learned over my 15 years as a PM at Microsoft. Basically, I can't go back in time to give this advice to myself 15 years ago, so I'm using this series to share the advice with you, hoping that you'll be able to avoid some of the mistakes that I made and learn from the lessons that I've learned over the years. In this video, I want to share with you a powerful question that every PM should include in their vocabulary and to use both freely and mindfully, and that is the question, what do I cut? Now, at Microsoft, regardless of the role or the team that you're on, there will always be more problems to solve than there are hours in the day. There will always be more features or capabilities to deliver than there are engineers on your team or engineer days in your execution semester. There's always too much to do, and this means that part of the PM's core skills is identifying what are the things that we say yes to and what are the things that we say no to. And very often it's not our decision to make. Like, we might be the ultimate arbiter of where we spend our time. We might not. The first piece of advice I want to share in this video is what seems like an obvious fact, but it's a trap that I see a lot of more junior PMs falling into, and that's the fact that you can't say yes to everything. Now, as humans, we love to say yes. It is a human behavior that making other people happy generally makes us happy, and even if it doesn't really make us happy, if I say yes to someone, they shut up and go away, that might make me happy, right? But saying yes to everything is a junior trap. This is the sort of the pitfall that when you are new to role and everybody has their own priorities, everybody says their thing is the most important thing, everybody comes in with requests for your time, and this is where this question comes in. Asking, what do I cut, is perhaps the most effective framing device in lots of different conversations. And I'd mentioned earlier, like, oh, the first piece of advice I want to give, well, there's really just one piece of advice. So for 2 and 3, I want to share a few concrete examples. So the second thing is an example from when I was relatively new on the Power BI CAT team, or the customer advisory team. So for context, the Power BI CAT team basically sits between the product group and large enterprise customer organizations. We work with customers to help them succeed, and then we share feedback, which could be feature requests, scenario understanding. There's a lot of detail to it. But we share feedback with the product team to help them understand and prioritize, like, what are the most important problems that they need to invest in solving so that these large customers can do things tomorrow that they can't do today. And one of the leaders on the Power BI team back in the day was a program manager named Will Thompson. If you're familiar with Power BI, this is probably not a new name to you, but Will was really adept at this question. So if the CAT team, we'd worked with a bunch of enterprise customers and we saw a theme emerging, we saw a signal emerging from the noise, and we came in to really drive home for Will and his team, like, it's important for you to solve this problem for customers. And Will never argued with us. So like, oh, that's great to know. Like, it's wonderful to understand what these customers need, where they're struggling today, what the opportunity is here. But like, we already have a plan, right? Like we have committed our resources for the next however long it may be. And Will was adept at asking, what do I cut? He'd come in with the semester plan. Very often, when you're deciding what do we do and what do we not do, there's a cut line somewhere, right? Like we've prioritized all the things that we might do, and then there's the line below which we don't have funding to do. Like we don't have enough people or enough time to do it, and above it, we do. Like close to the line is often where the interesting arguments take place. But Will would very often break out the committed plan for the semester, and he'd turn this into a collaborative conversation. For all of us on the CAT team that were asking for a new thing to be added, he'd force us to think mindfully about, if we add this new thing, what existing thing do I cut? And the interesting thing in my mind is that most of the time, even though we truly believed that the new thing was important, it wasn't more important than the work that was already committed. So we would eventually add it to the backlog, and it would be delivered in a future semester. It would be delivered later. For those places where everyone agreed that the new thing, the emerging challenge, was indeed more important than the older things, how willing Will and his team were to work with us to understand and adapt and adjust. The third thing that I want to share, this is kind of an example for you going back to the topic that we covered in a previous video about managing up. At some point, your manager is going to ask you to do something, and you're going to think, oh my goodness, I'm buried, I'm swamped, I'm just barely keeping my head above water now. This additional thing is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And speaking as a people manager, and speaking as someone who's used this technique very effectively myself, this is the perfect time for you to ask, what do I cut? So you've already given me these other things. This is where I'm spending my time today. If I say yes to this new thing, I'm going to have to say no to something that I've already said yes to. As my manager, you need to help me understand my priorities. Which of these existing things that were previously priorities are now lower than this new thing that you're asking me to do? And this framing function to get into a collaborative, honest conversation with your manager so that they understand where you are, what you're doing, what you need, and the trade-offs that they're asking you to make. This may be an opportunity for something to be deprioritized. It may be an opportunity for that additional thing to get delayed or given to another member of your team. But this is the time to have that conversation. Because here's the deal. When you say yes to everything, invariably this means either that you end up breaking later on. You're going to be burned out. You're not going to be of any use to anyone because you've destroyed your work-life balance by saying yes to all the things, or you end up breaking your commitments. If you say yes to everything up front, when you get closer to the deadlines, closer to when your deliverables or outcomes are due, like this is when things are going to catch on fire. And if at the end of the day, at the 11th hour, you're then asking for help saying, oh, I can't do all these things, your failure to prepare has turned into somebody else's emergency. It is because you did not ask up front that this has suddenly become a crisis instead of a conversation. And this is why getting into the habit of asking, what do I cut? This is the phrase that will empower you and help you and all of your stakeholders think about priorities and think about where it's most important for you to spend your time. As I mentioned at the top of the video, sometimes you are the ultimate arbiter of where you invest your time. Like sometimes you get to decide, and sometimes you get to inform your manager or other leaders that are making a decision that you need to align to. Either way, getting in the habit of asking, what do I cut? This is going to drive the conversation that you need to ensure that your priorities are set appropriately and consistently, and that everybody is on the same page. That's what I've got for today. If you use this phrase, if I have used this phrase on you in the past, or if it's something that's part of your ongoing vocabulary, please jump into the comments and let me know. If there's something that you liked, something that you didn't, if this would work on your team, or if this is something that would get you in trouble on your team, definitely jump into the comments and say, I'm relying on your interaction. So you're liking, you're subscribing, you're watching, you're commenting. Help me understand where to go with this series. I think that I've got a lot to share. Please let me know if this is valuable to you. Please let me know where you'd like me to go next, and I'll see you next time.